see for the class diagrams, this is what I want to see. Statement of responsibility or purpose. Attributes. We talked about the player class. Last time, we talked about the attributes of the player class. And we said that the data stores for the player class are pretty simple. There's a player name, and there's a player icon, X or O. The easiest thing to do is assign X to the first player to check in and just assign O to the second player. Now, here's a hint. Once a player has put their name in, both players put their names in, and you've assigned X and O to them, you can then create the objects of a player data type for player A and player B, or player 1, player 2. So how do you create the objects? Shobit, you're first up. How do you create these two objects of type player given the name and the icon? You have to create two objects of type player. Remember, you have one class. Everybody got that? You have one player class, and which I think I sent you. And you have two objects of the type player class. You have to use the method new and apply it to the class player and pass it two parameters or two arguments. Okay. So in terms of the methods for the player class, you don't need setters because the setting of the information that's to be in there can be done how and where. When new is used on a data type, what gets executed? Jay?
When you said when new is executed, what do you get?
When new is called on a data type such as player, and everybody needs to be listening to this, not just poor old Jay. He's just in the wrong place in the sequence here. When new is applied to a data type like player, what gets executed?
Do you create a reference to that object?
A reference is created.
Because
Correct.
you're referring to a new of that object. So
yes, you're referring to a new object, which is created where? Where is the object actually created? I sent you all a picture. Where does the object end up? Well, okay, here we go. Let's see. If I shrink this, I'll probably never find it again, but that's all right. All right. Let me see here. Simple memory allocation. Okay. We'll look at this.
You're
When
still
new
sharing the Word document, bro.
God bless, yes. Okay, thank you. All right, can we see a picture here?
Yep, we're on Draw.io now.
All right. Okay, when you apply new to a data type, I don't care if the data type is a text box or a player or a button. Doesn't matter what the type of the item is. When you apply new to that data type, you get an object of that data type created. And where is that object stored?
It's
right
stored in, yeah, stored in the text player name, stored in that text box.
No. Where is this object that we just created? Where is it stored? Let's see, who's down here? I recognize this person, Eric. Where is this player object or text box object or any object that you create with new? Where is it stored?
In the memory where it's allocated, I'm taking a shot on the dark.
Where is that? It's right here in the picture.
Mhm.
What do we call that memory? Austin, do you remember what we call that memory?
Where it's
Where
I feel like we
all
already
the
said
objects, Austin,
reference variable.
Austin, wait. All the objects that you create, and this is true in 2168 or in whatever second course you took, it's true here. When you create an object, where does it get stored?
In the initial reference variable that was established.
No, that's where the reference to the object gets stored. That's this. I'll get to, there is an object class, but that has nothing to do with the answer to the question.
The heap?
The heap. There is this area of memory, which is usually called the free store or the heap. When you create an object, that's where it goes. So if this cloud-like looking thing is the heap, then I can see there's a spelling error in here, but this is the heap, this cloud thing here. It's a great big area of storage. The heap, the free store, whatever you want to call it, that's where all your objects go. All of them. And what goes in each object? The attributes of the object that you just created. So what attributes would be stored in a player object, given what we've just discussed and given the code I sent you? What attributes would be stored?
The name and the icon.
The name and the icon. So the player object, folks, is fairly simple. The text box object that's shown here is not so simple. I haven't counted them recently, but it must have 40 or 50.
I have a question,
attributes.
Professor.
Yeah.
Would in the player class, would the fact if they're going first or second also be stored in there or no?
No, you could do that. You
Okay.
could do that. You probably don't need to, but you certainly could store that information in there. That would be a third attribute. Okay.
Okay.
But I'll give you another little hint here. You always, when we're writing code, you have to decide, what do I need to know about these players? And beyond that, don't mess with anything. For example, we talked about what does Temple care about students? For example, yeah, we need to know where you live. We need to know how much money you owe the university, because it never owes you anything. And we need to know what courses you're taking. Those are things we need to know. Do we need to know whether you have any hair? No. University doesn't care if you're bald. University doesn't care if you're bald or if you haven't gotten a haircut for 6 months. Doesn't care. Now, for the players, we need to know their name. Why do we need their name?
You have to verify that they're not matching too.
Well, yeah, but is there something someplace in the form where we take advantage of knowing the player's name?
Isn't there a text box that shows which current
yeah, who's
player
up?
based on their
Yes.
name would be going.
Correct. There is a text box where, and the text box was intended to help the players know whose turn it is. Well, if we don't have the names stored in a player object, then we can't figure out whose turn it is and post that name in there, okay? So that's why we need the name. If we didn't want to help the users to know whose turn it is, then we wouldn't need the name. The other thing we're going to need, and we'll see in a few minutes, is we're going to need to do something with the icon. Well, if we don't know who's playing, we don't have the icon stored or associated with the player, we can't do anything with the icon. Now, in terms of knowing whose turn it is, we're going to set up an extra object reference called current player. And we're going to, and I'll show you how to do that if somebody asks. When we set up current player, we're going to set current player to reference player A first. Then when player A is all done, in order to handle player B, all we need to do is set that current player reference to player B, and we're done. So I don't really need to store information about the player's order in order to write this simulator. You can do it. Doesn't hurt anything. It's not a bad idea. But to make this simulation work, you don't need it, because when you get to the end of player A's turn, then you take this current player variable and you set it equal to refer to player B. That's all I need to do. When player B is done, I go back to player A. Player A is done, I go to player B. So other than setting the current player equal to player A, I don't really care who's player one, who's two. Okay. So anyway, back to the point here. For the class that is the player class, I have two attributes. Then I need to deal with, okay, what methods do I need? Well, in this particular case, I do need a method that would get the name of the player. You can call it getName. And it'll return the name of the player, and you can then stuff that name into the text box in the form. What questions? Okay. No, because I tell you why. That's a great question. Great question. The reason why you don't need that is because in your main program, when the main code behind, when you're finished with the work of one player, you're just going to switch to the other one. And I'll show you how that works. So you don't need to do anything but assign this variable called current player to be player A. And then when you're all finished processing player A, you just assign to current player pointer to player B. I'll show you how that works in a couple of minutes, because it's kind of hard to just talk about. You got to see the code. So we'll take a look at the code. Question?
Is the game not being played simultaneously? Is it like?
I can't quite hear you. Can you talk a little louder?
I'm kind of confused on how that's going to work, because are they not playing simultaneously then?
Only one player at a time is taking a turn. They're both playing together, but only one player at a time takes a turn. And when that player's done, the other player takes a turn. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
They're both playing, and I'll show you a little bit about how that works. Because, you know, I could wave my hands like, does anybody here have a father who's a mathematician? No? We used to tease our math instructors, well, kind of behind their backs, about how they just wave their hands about everything being simple. So I can sit up here and wave my hands all over the place, but I have to show you some code, which I will do. But this fundamental issue that when you create an object, the object is stored in the free store or the heap, whatever you want to call it. And new will allocate memory for the object and initialize that memory. And in our case, we're going to pass new 2 arguments. And it will use those 2 arguments to initialize the attributes. Okay? And then new returns a reference to the object, which gets stored in a previously declared reference variable. And it looks like this. And I think maybe we're going to have to now talk about some code. But this picture is important to understanding the code. So let me think about any questions about this picture, other than the fact that I can't spell.
Thank you so much for showing it.
All right, well, who was it that said a picture is worth many words? They weren't kidding. File, save. Yeah, okay, so and please understand, it doesn't matter what the class defined type is. Everything works the same. So any class, text box, button, player, internal board class, which we haven't talked much about, all of those, when you instantiate them, this is what you get in the free store or heap. Notice this thing doesn't have a name. Okay? It doesn't have a name, and if you don't save the reference to it, you won't be able to access any of it. All the references to the objects that you create have to be stored in some reference variable somewhere. Otherwise, you got memory in here with no link, and it's like dead space. Can't do anything with it. Now, this is no different from what happened in 2168. How many of you remember working with trees?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, I expect a chorus here. You work with trees? Did you create a node that you wanted to attach to a tree?
Yep.
How did you create that node?
It was
You used new.
new. Yeah.
Yeah. And you might have passed some arguments to help initialize the node, or you might have had some setters that you used to initialize the node. But in the end, you had a link to that node, and you had to stuff that link somewhere in an existing node in the tree. And if you lost that link, bye-bye node. Okay, can't access it. All right? All right, now I'm going to leave this. And I'm going to see if I can't. Oh, no, I can't. I don't want to get to that yet. Let me leave this up here. Let me go to my PC. I'm going to try to find some code for you, because we really do need to look at some code. So bear with me for a minute, And then you can tell me that I'm not sharing the screen. Let's go down to tic-tac-toe. Here we go. All right. Oh, come on. Hurry up. I have a departmental computer here for which I'm very thankful. But it ain't exactly the speediest thing in the world. But while it's doing what it's doing, let me share screen. There we go. All right. Now everybody can see Visual Studio, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, whoever's recording this, here is your player class. It's a model of a real problem domain player like you, Austin, or ISPOC. It's a model because I don't really care about you, Austin or ISPOC or anybody else. I don't care about you. I just care about your name and your icon. I don't even care about your wins because we're only going to play one game at a time. So you could strip this out. Now, so we have the attributes, 2 of them. That's what I expect to see in what you turn in. And we have, I have 2 getters, they're properties, but I don't think I ever used them. Okay. Oh, wait, I did, because yes, I did use these. These are called properties. I don't know if Java had something called properties. If you don't remember, I would suggest that you replace these guys in here with methods called getIcon and another one called getName. If you're familiar with the Java equivalent of properties, you could try to use these properties if you want. They return the same thing that your 2 getters would return. Notice there are no setters in here because I have a constructor. Notice the constructors are always public. They have the same name as the class. And this particular constructor has 2 arguments. I think I sent you this code, but if I didn't, it should show up on the video that is being taken. So let's say for the sake of argument, we have 2 attributes. Whenever you use new on the player model class, you pass it a name and an icon, and the name and the icon are used to initialize the 2 attributes. Questions? Okay. This is how life worked in 1068, 2168, and now here. Okay. Every time you use new, a constructor executes. There are often many constructors. So the system has to figure out, all right, which one has 2 arguments, where the first one is a string and the second one's a character. And that's the constructor that gets called. You use new, you call a constructor. That's the way it works. What does the constructor do? It will do some initialization. It will do all the initialization, either because you told it what to do or because it uses default values. So you use new. In this case, I have 1 constructor. It has 2 arguments. This is what it does. Questions? That's how this works. And we will have to go back and take a look at where something like this takes place. So let's see if I can figure out how to do that.
That'll make submitting that homework a lot easier.
Well, we're not done yet. Hopefully we'll make it a little easier, okay? But the point is the same. I want to know the purpose. I want to know what the attributes are, and I want to know what the methods are. And we'll take a look at the internal board model, or what I call board model, in a few minutes. Okay, let's view some code. And let's see. Okay, I think I sent you some of this.
Yes, that's what you sent us.
Yeah, we have like
Okay.
a couple pieces of it on a Word doc.
Okay, and if there's something that's missing, well, somebody will need to tell me and we'll set it up. Now, in this case, I wanted one object of type board model. This is how you create objects. Board model is the type. Here's the name I gave it. Here's new. Now, up here, things get a little hairy because some of this isn't discussed until chapter 8. But let me walk you through what you get here, and then I might try to show you a picture. I wanted 2 players for this game. Anybody ever play Monopoly?
Yes,
Huh?
I have.
Yeah.
Okay. How many players can you have in Monopoly?
I think
Six.
so.
6, 8, 8, 6, whatever. I just played Boggle the other night with my
How'd you do?
daughter. Oh, I got lucky. I got a, what do they call it? Not Boggle. It wasn't Boggle. It was, what's that
Yahtzee?
other day? Yahtzee. Yeah. I played Yahtzee and I got a Yahtzee, so I won.
It's all in good fun then.
Yeah, well, we'll probably try again next week. So I played with 4 other people. So there were 5 of us. So I decided just to give you a taste of what's coming down the road. Here is how to set up a list of 2 items. When you get to chapter 8, you'll read about it. So we get a list of 2 players, but I haven't created the objects of those players. So just hang on with me. Here is another weird declaration. This declares a 2-dimensional array of buttons. Doesn't declare or create any buttons. That's important. Just like this doesn't create any players, it's just a list. You know, like in Shrek 1, the king said, "Ooh, that's ugly," or something like that. And Shrek said, "Oh, that's not nice. It's just a donkey." Well, we don't have any players here. We just have a list. I don't have any buttons here. I just have a 3-dimensional array. I'm sorry, a 2-dimensional 3x3 array of references to buttons. Now let me
What
see
does
how
the,
this is good. What?
What
I'm gonna
does the comma in the brackets mean under the
That
button?
means it's 2-dimensional.
Mm.
The brackets tell us it's an array. The syntax, which you'll learn in chapter 8, but you must have had something similar in Java, didn't you?
Yeah,
The-
I'm assuming, is that just, it's just like, it's left blank, but it's showing the comma separates the dimensions of it, right?
That's right. It says that this is supposed to be, I'm creating here a 2-dimensional array of what's actually references to buttons. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But this is how you create, this is one way to create an array. It's 2-dimensional. The name of the reference to this object is new button. The object itself is a 3x3 two-dimensional array. Again, I don't expect you to be able to do this yet, so I'm giving it to you, but I do expect you to understand what gets created here. Okay, so let me leave this and see.
So are those references that you created right now, they're just blank and you have to assign them?
Well, they're not blank. They're not, nothing except a character that you haven't stored anything in can be blank. The trouble is I've lost you guys now. Oh, what did I do here? Question is, how do I get back to where I was? Oh, I need somebody who knows how to use, all right, I know what I can do. I guess I can stop sharing. Yeah, let me stop sharing. Yeah, all right, now, what do I want to do? Oh no, I don't have it here yet. Rats. Let's see here. No. Mail. Which is the picture? Darn. Oh, here we go. No, that's not going to do it. All right, here we go. We'll go to the PC. We'll go here. Syllabus. Okay. Draw IO. Let's see here. All right, let's bear with me yet. I'm not quite there. Ah, I really do this? Nah. Simple memory, player list and objects. So let's try this. Ah, good. Okay, now all I have to do is share screen. And where'd it go? Oh. I can't find the diagram I just opened. No. It's not it. Huh. Nope. Let's try this. Player list and objects. Ah, here we go. Okay. All right. Remember the player list we created a few minutes ago? Well, here's the name of the list, which is a reference variable to a list of 2 items. Remember? Here's the list. Okay? The list is an object. It's an object of type list of player. Okay? Fact, if I were a good guy, I would put that up here. That make this a little bigger. Object of type player list.
You're like a pro on draw.io now.
Oh, no, not hardly. But what I can't do, this is another thing. If you don't listen to your parents, you'll end up like me. My mother told me to take a typing course when I was a little kid, and I never did. And boy, have I paid for it. Okay, so this is a list. It's an object of type player list. What's stored in here? Null. These two things do not exist yet. Get this picture firmly in mind. We did create a list. The list itself is an object. It was a list of size 2. And when we were done, we stuffed the reference to the list in here. So now I have a reference to a list. The two elements in the list are also references. They're references to what will be objects of type player model. But I never created the objects. So right now, all I have is this list and its reference. I don't have this. Maisha, you're going to send me an email telling me to send out an email of player list and objects after
Okay.
class. All right?
Uh-huh.
All right. Does everybody see this picture? Don't worry about these yet because we haven't created them.
Yeah, we can see
the Right?
picture. We can see that.
Yeah.
All we created with what we had a few minutes ago was a list of two elements that can only point to player objects, but I haven't created the objects, so there's nothing in there right now. So we have a pointer to the list, a reference to the list. Now, let's see. I'm going to get out of this. And I want to share the screen, but I want to share code. Here's the code. Okay. Here's the statement that created the list. When we said new list size 2, we got a list of references to player model. Here, we got a list of 9 references to buttons. And I think I have a picture of that. Maisha, when you ask for the picture of the player list, also ask for the picture of the 9 buttons. If I have it, I'll send it. Now, let's move down a little bit because I don't know how much I gave you of this. Okay. Here is the code. As long as the player names are not null or blank, and what's out here, by the way, says that player A name is not equal to player B name. As long as the player names are valid, then I can create the two objects. Okay, so I create the first object. So whoever was player A in the form, I pass player A's name and the icon X. If I didn't send you this code, somebody will have to tell me and I'll send it to you.
If you could send us the complete version of it.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm not going to send you the complete version.
Yeah, I
But-
have it in a Word doc. I'm looking at it as well on my screen.
This is in the document I sent you?
Yeah.
This part?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in.
okay,
part E,
good.
part
Okay.
E.
As long as you have that, but I'm not sending you all the code. You got to do some work. Okay, so we create the first of the two objects that were in that picture. We put player A's name in the name attribute field, and we put the X icon in. And where does the reference to that object go? Where does the reference to this object go? Look at the statement. Where did I put the reference that new returned?
Player model?
No,
Is it the P?
It would be P.
it goes in P.
Oh, yeah, duh.
What is P? We got to get our terminology correct here.
reference variable.
Reference variable?
It's not an object.
Is it a reference variable?
It is a reference variable. And what's the valid type that it could refer to?
String?
Nope. If it were a string, I'd have string in here, string P.
Player model.
Oh, the
Okay. So what I've done here is I've taken the player model that I declared here. Player model is a class. Here it is. Here's player model. A defined class in this project. And I declared, whoops. Uh-oh. All right, where is it? Okay. I declared a variable. That's the first point. This is a variable, just like an int x. X would be a variable, but x is a value variable. This is a reference variable because player model is the name of a class. Whenever you declare a variable by using the name of a class, you get a reference variable to anything of that class type. So P is that little reference variable that was down in the left-hand corner of that diagram. New returns a reference to this player model, okay? And this line of code takes that reference and puts it in P. So again, P is a reference variable that can only reference objects of this type, player model. Okay? Now I put the reference in P. What does this weird line of code do?
Does that append the new player to the list that you made?
It basically appends or adds the reference to the player, not the player object itself. It appends the reference to the list.
Do you mind going over the second line of code? What exactly is P again? I'm sorry.
This line here or this one?
The second one, P
This-
is the new player model.
Here. Okay. First of all, what does new do? Muzu, what does new do?
Creates the object,
It creates an object of what type?
player model, the class player model.
Correct. Correct. Bingo. And it passes two arguments, which if you look at the information in player model, it will tell you that it takes these two arguments and initializes the two attributes of the player model class. So new creates an object of type player model, and it allocates memory for its attributes and initializes the attributes. Those are the things that it does, and you need to know this cold, stone cold. I think he's a wrestler. Stone cold somebody.
Steve Austin.
Steve Austin, yes. So new creates that object of type player model, and it also, and this is really important, it returns a reference to that object. Still with me? Okay. And we store that reference in this variable P. Then we add that reference variable to the list. And that's how the object gets attached to the list. Remember the picture? The object had a reference to it that came out of the list. This is the line of code that puts the link from the list to the player object. Okay? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
We're going to reinforce that because we're going to do it again. We're going to create another object of type player model. Okay? And we're going to give it a name. The name of the second player, the icon is O. We create another object of type player with two attributes. Memory is allocated for a name and an icon, and these two items are stored in those attributes. Well, how is it that I can then take the reference to this new player model and put it in the same variable? I'll put it right back in P. But I already had something in P. How does that work?
Does P go away once you append it? But I'm not
No,
sure
it doesn't.
why.
No, but you're really close. You're really close.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is
I'm listening.
temporary?
Doesn't it have different parameters? So the
You're close too. Somebody said something about, oh, now I forgot what you said. Say it again.
Temporary, I think someone said.
It's
Temporary?
in
Yeah.
a sense, it's temporary. Okay, because what happens is once I take what was stored in P and I add it to the list, I don't need what was stored in P anymore because the reference that was in P has now been put in the list. So I have two references to the first player object. I don't need them both. So I'll just take the second reference and stick it right in the same place. Wipes out what was here, but I don't need what was here anymore.
Professor,
Yes.
when you create the second player after you've added the first, I guess in other words, could you say it overwrites the variable? Is that, or is that separate than what you were saying?
It will, once the second player is created and I stuff its reference in here, I've overwritten this variable.
Got it.
Which means what was here is gone. It's gone forever. But I don't need it anymore because I used
Right.
it.
Got it.
Okay, so I don't need this reference here anymore. So I just reuse the same variable. And then I add the reference to the second object, right? And now I don't need either reference because I put them where I wanted them. Now comes the tricky part. Remember I was talking about this current player variable? Let's see where that is up here. Okay, I have declared in the main code behind a variable of type player model. What kind of variable is this? Is it a reference variable or a value variable?
Value variable.
Is it valuable?
It's
Value
a
variable.
Reference?
it's a reference variable. How do you know it's a reference variable?
because
New.
player model is a class.
Player model's a class. Down here, turn count. What kind of variable is turn count? It's a value variable. It's an int variable, and we know that for a value variable, the values are stored right in the variables. So 0 gets assigned to turn count, which is a value variable. However, up here in the reference variable, something actually does get assigned to current player here. Just like something got assigned to turn count, something is, by default, something is assigned to current players. Anybody know what it is?
No.
It's null. This is a reference variable. If I don't put anything in here, if I don't put anything in here, the system will assign a default value. And for reference variables, that default value is null. So there's always something in these variables. If we don't put something in there, the system will, in this case, set it to null. Okay. So let's see. All right. So we created a reference variable. Now, I want to, I want to define who the first player is going to be. So I take the reference. I want to do this slowly. I take the reference to the first player object in that list. Take the reference to that player object and I store that reference in this variable. Got it? Everybody? Questions? Anybody?
If you don't
One
mind,
more
can you
time.
repeat?
What?
Yeah, just the
Yes,
last
I can
part.
repeat it.
Yeah.
This is a reference. If you look at the picture, which I will send you later, which you will need to look at when you're looking at this code. If you look at that picture, player list sub 0 is a reference to the object of the first player. Got it? Player list sub 0 contains a reference to the first player object. I'm now taking that reference and I'm putting it in current player. So if you added current player to that picture, it would now contain a link to the object that's known as player 1. So I can get its name and its icon for player 1. Now, later on, when I'm done with player 1, all I need to do is say, is current player player 1? And if it is, I set current player to player list sub 1. So I have a little if then else. And that's how I switch players. And if somebody wants me to send you that code, just ask. Ask me for the switch players code. I'll send it to you. Now, we are out of time, so I can't do much for you in terms of the, oh boy, I can't do much for you in terms of the behavior diagram second page. And I can't do much for you in terms of the board model. Let me just take a look at the board model for a minute. All right. Do I want to do this? I will send you some of the code for the board model, so you'll have it. Let's see, Jay, you're going to ask me to send some of the code for the board model class.
Yep.
Notice, folks, the board model class has a, oh no, wait. It has a constructor that basically does nothing. It resets the game, that's all. But it has 2 attributes, that's all. One is a constant integer. In case for some reason I want to make my tic-tac-toe board of size 16, I just need to change this. Okay. Now, I could have made the internal representation of my board a two-dimensional array. I didn't. I used a one-dimensional array. I'll send you the code for this. I may send you all the code. Okay, so that you'll have it. So you'll do what I called reverse engineer. You'll take the code for the board model that I send you, and you'll create the description of the board model class from the code I send. That's kind of reverse engineering, because usually what we want to do is design the text for the board model first and then write the code. But what I'm going to do is send you the code, and I'm going to ask you to look at the code and figure out what are the attributes for the board model and what are the methods. So you'll have to look at these methods, and you'll have to understand how they work, and you will have to send me information about what the methods are for the class. And that's a fairly long list. But I'll send you this code if somebody reminds me. I'll send you this code. Now, you can't finish homework assignment 1. Well, one person maybe can, but hang on to it. Don't try to turn in homework assignment 1. We'll turn it in Thursday along with homework assignment 2.
If we already did it, is it fine to just overwrite? Or should-
If you already did it, just hold on to it.
Thank
Is there
you.
any way we
Because-
could get feedback if we already did it?
Got the
Yeah, if you
You can ask the TAs.
yeah, I can give you some feedback if you already
Thank
did.
you. You're the
All
best.
right,
Frank.
you'll have to bail it to me.
Thank
All
you.
right,
You're the best.
and I promise to try to be nice. Just kidding, just kidding. All right,
You just gotta
Um,
tell it how it is.
I'll see you in lab tomorrow, and then Thursday we will deal with the we have some things to do on Thursday. First of all, we need to do with the behavior diagram for page 2. And then we're going to go over the dynamic generation of the buttons. And we're also going to have a quiz. Now, I'm going to be sending you a couple pictures.
Do you know what's, can you email us what's going to be on the quiz?
Basically, it's going to be stuff that we covered last Thursday and today. In other words, I'm going to be asking you about pictures. I'm going to be asking you, I'll send you an email. I will send you an email, okay? But essentially, last Thursday and today's lectures and the pictures associated with them, that's the ball game. Okay? I will send you an email.
So,
All right, you characters, go to Claudia's class or whatever it is. Is that what's next?
Yeah, Professor.
How can you sit still? How can you sit still for all that time?
With 2 classes before this, too.
I've been here,
Yeah.
here since
problem.
9 a.m.
The world may never know.
I know I'm old, but I couldn't do that anymore.
Dying to get out.
I'd be
My camera's off for a reason.
how, I know.